I'm Neil Fisher, the Principal Financial Strategist at Wealthcraft. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the more common personal finance slip-ups and offer some insights and some ideas relating to them. We all make mistakes, especially when it comes to money. So whether you're just starting out in your career, you're nearing the end of your career, or you're somewhere in between, certain financial errors can have long-lasting consequences. So today we're going to have a look at some of those, and in particular, noting that some of these mistakes aren't obvious at all at the beginning, and they can sneak up on you. So let's look at some of the most common and costly financial errors, no matter what your stage of life. So not having an emergency fund, whether you get a sudden car repair, an unexpected medical bill, or even a loss of your job. These emergencies can strike at any time. Without a financial backup, you're forced to rely on credit cards or loans, which can then lead to debt spirals and stress. Without an emergency fund, people tend to drain their savings accounts or rack up credit card debt because they don't have a safety net. So you should aim to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses saved. And this means you have to have some idea of your weekly, fortnightly, or monthly expenses. Start small, even $10 a week, and then build it up over time. Don't spend it unless you've got a genuine emergency. And then if you do have to spend it, start again, build it up, and avoid the debt spiral. Okay, next up is failing to track spending. It's easy to assume that just because you're not overspending on big ticket items, you're managing your finances well. But small everyday purchases can add up very quickly. Without tracking where your money is going, you'll find yourself surprised by just how much it actually spending on these small things such as subscriptions and impulse buys actually add up. So what do we do about that? Use a budget app to help monitor where you're spending your money, and indeed also find out what you're spending it on. It's really amazing that those $5 cups of coffee really add up. Next, you can check your bank statement for any subscriptions, highlight them as you go through, and then take action to cancel them if they're not being used, if they have low use. And what I mean by that is not in the last 30 days. Or if indeed you're going over your budget and you find yourself going over your budget all the time. Next up, credit card debt. Holding on to credit card debt is one of the biggest financial mistakes that you see, and it can happen at any age, and it's absolutely costly. According to the Agile Market Intelligence, 40% of people in Australia are struggling with a record amount of credit card debt. That's nearly 1 in 2. Credit cards often come with high interest rates, and the average in Australia is around 18.6%, which means if you're only paying the minimum payments, your debts can quickly get out of control, and you end up paying almost double for the original amount. Consumer credit surveys also show that 29% of Australians actively rely on credit cards just to manage their monthly baseline expenses. A cycle that quickly turns short-term cash flow fixes into expensive long-term debt traps. So, for those that cannot make the repayments, utilise the emergency lifelines in Australia by contacting the bank's hardship team or access the free counselling services that are offered. For those cardholders who do have stable cash flow but are trapped in being just able to pay the interest rate cycle, pick one of the following methodologies that I'll now go through to help you eliminate the outstanding balances. So the first one is what we call an avalanche method. So this strategy targets the most expensive debt first to minimise the total interest paid. You maintain minimum payments on every single other card, except for the one with the highest interest rate. and that's where you direct all your spare cash flow to it. Once cleared, you do the same again for the card with the next highest rate. Or the second method is what we call the snowball method. This strategy focuses on building momentum by eliminating smaller balances first. You maintain minimum payments on every single card that you have, except the one with the smallest balance. And in this case, you direct all your spare cash flow to it until the balance hits zero. Once it's clear, you do the same for the next smallest balance and then the next smallest balance, creating a snowball effect of quick structural wins. Next is disregarding retirement savings. So disregarding these is also a large mistake that can really come back to bite you no matter how old you are. It's easy to think you've got time to save, especially when you're younger, or you tell yourself you'll catch it up later. But when that occurs, normally you don't find that you will start saving even when you have the extra cash flow. The sooner you start, the better, because once that money is given time to grow, it compounds. And it compounds interest on interest. So the solution here is start saving early, even if it's small amounts. Automate your deposits from your pay, whether it's by percentage or by a dollar amount, so you won't miss it and automatically goes into your account. Time is your biggest advantage with compound interest. Okay, so when you set it up, if you're not comfortable in investing at this stage, you can put it into a high interest saving account. And you can start with as little as 5 to 10% of your income and then let the balance compound over your lifetime to end up with a substantial nest egg for retirement. Remember, you can add to it through any pay rises, putting lump sums as you get bonuses as you go through. And Albert Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Okay, next is medical insurance. One accident, a major health scare, or an emergency can wipe out your savings in no time if you're not properly covered. So it might seem like an extra expense that isn't necessary, but paying for insurance is a lot cheaper than facing a massive bill without any help from anybody else. So whether it's health, life, or disability coverage, going without protection can destroy your finances in a very short amount of time. Some families have even gone bankrupt because they skip insurance to save money. So Australia operates on a universal public system, Medicare, and this runs side by side with the private system, and your options depend on your household income and your specific healthcare needs. So you can utilise public hospital elective wait lists like non-threatening procedures, but you will be triaged based on clinical urgency. You can bypass that elective wait list and opt to pay your entire out-of-pocket expenses as a self-funded private patient. So you can also select what you can afford from private health providers. So look around and pick out exactly what you need. You can share costs with them on hospitals. You can take out policies with no extras, no dental, etc., to meet your budget. That's the key point. To set up an efficient alternative, you could calculate your usage based on your history, your medical history, and set up a dedicated savings account for health. And then deposit a small amount weekly, monthly, $4, whatever your pay cycle is, to give you some flexibility in case you get caught out. Next, I want to talk about those get-rich-quick schemes and risky investments. We've all seen those flashy ads promising big returns, little effort, but the truth is, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So whether it's a vague investment, a too easy business opportunity, or some high risk gamble guaranteed to make you money, taking these shortcuts almost always ends in major disappointment and, in some cases, a loss of your retirement or investment cash. So, as the pressure builds to maintain your current living standards in retirement, so does the temptation to take one of these fail-proof investment opportunities. And indeed, we all know about endless crypto and meme stock market horror stories that have occurred. By the time people wake up to the fact that it is a get-rich-quick scheme, they find their retirement savings or an investment saving is gone. The important message here is that slow and steady investing wins every time. So when people fall for these traps, it's rarely due to a lack of intelligence. It's usually because of an emotional vulnerability like financial stress or a desire to pivot careers blindsides people's logical thought processes. Scammers and promoters of highly speculative assets rely on urgency. They create artificial scarcity. We've all heard it. Only 3 spots left. Invest now. Or they project a hyper accelerated timeline to force you to act before your rational brain kicks in. So I recommend looking at one of these, the 2 following methods. First one is what we call a 72-hour circuit breaker. So the most effective personal rule is a mandatory 72-hour cooling off period where any unprompted financial decisions can have time to benefit from your logical thought processes kicking in. And also moving your money from a transaction account to a hard to reach savings account, it creates that physical dislocation from you having easy access to your money. The second one I want to talk about is the explain it to a 10-year-old test. And in this solution, if an investor cannot clearly explain how that asset generates revenue without using buzzwords like synergy, revolutionary, algorithm, leverage, disruption, you shouldn't buy it. If the revenue mechanism is invisible, as we just discussed, the product is usually a wealth transfer from the buyer to the promoter. The underlying reality with this is that in finance, risk and return are on a strict equilibrium. Okay? High return always equals high risk or fraud. Next, keeping up with the Joneses. Okay, this is one of my favorites because this is a classic money mistake for many and can easily spell disaster for your finances. Just because somebody else has bought the latest car, it's got the latest designer clothes, been on this fancy holiday overseas, doesn't mean you should be aiming to emulate them. Okay, it's way better to focus on your own financial goals and live within your means, stay within your train tracks of your budgets. Trying to keep up the Joneses will wreck your finances fast. Examples include people buying and financing luxury cars, the going out pay later holidays, and indeed even buying homes they can't afford or does not suit their purpose. Social media makes this worse because in reality, much of those rich-looking people are drowning in debt. So what do we do about it? We are hardwired to evaluate our personal success not by a static dollar amount, but by how we look relative to our immediate peer group. The problem is the Joneses are frequently an illusion. Statistically, a massive proportion of high visibility lifestyles are fueled by overextended consumer debt. Meaning people are often spending way outside their means, and that becomes a financial trap. Right? So we cannot emulate what we do not see. So there are a number of tips here. Firstly, execute a social media audit. The single fastest way to curb impulse, status-driven spending, is to unfollow accounts, influencers, or acquaintances that often trigger those feelings of financial inadequacy or envy. The second thing is to enact a 30-day test. So if a peer buys a brand new car, gets a reno done, or goes on a luxury holiday, this generally triggers a sudden urge to match it. So implement a strict 30-day cooling off period for yourself. And the third tip around this area is establish a friction protocol. Remove saved credit card data from auto-filled browsers and your digital wallets. That way, you can have a well thought out process to not fall into those debt traps. The core mistake of status seeking is competing on the wrong scoreboard. Material possessions are invariably high visibility, but depreciate rapidly. True wealth is low visibility, and it's the asset column on the balance sheet that grants time, choice, and peace of mind. Moving through life without those clear financial goals is like driving a car in dense fog. You're burning fuel, you're moving forward, you're putting in the effort, but you have no idea where you're heading towards your destination, or indeed driving straight off the cliff. So without those clear financial goals, often called financial drift, you don't have a targeted destination for your money, your cash flow automatically defaults to lifestyle creep, and your spending expands to match your income. So a solution here, and the biggest reason people fail to set those financial goals, is that standard advice makes it sound incredibly boring. Okay, filling out some spreadsheet for an arbitrary 20-year goal always provides zero emotional reward today. So one of the things I look at is implementing what I call a 3-bucket horizon. If you've got a 30-year retirement plan and it feels too abstract, break your life into 3 clear horizons so that your brain can process it easily. And what I mean by that is break it up into now, the next 1 to 2 years, or immediately, and tick off the emergency buffer that you need, emergency funds, and start to eliminate all that bad debt. In the next phase, what I call the 3 to 7 year phase, okay, upgrade your home equity. So paying more down on that, so it provides more equity into your home. And look at business expansion capital, whether you want to buy into businesses or do something in the investment space. And then the last phase is that 7-year plus timeline later, and you're looking at your financial independence. So have you got enough assets that are going to produce enough income for you to live off according to your lifestyle later on? So I've helped my clients by setting specific numbers and deadlines, as it makes a huge difference to stay motivated and to measure your progress as you're going through. I also suggest using SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, to aid in breaking down a financial goal. Next, avoiding money conversations as a couple. Okay, avoiding money conversations with your partner can lead to disaster, right? Money fights are a leading cause of divorce. So engage your spouse with monthly money talks and discuss your joint financial goals. Taking this course of action can be a bit of a game changer. So while it might feel awkward at first, ignoring these conversations can lead to misunderstandings or bigger issues down the line. So whether it's about how you'll budget, how you'll save or plan for the future, being open with each other about money keeps you both on the same page. It's all about making sure you're aligned on your goals, your debt, and how you're going to handle things together as a couple going forward. So a number of ideas that I use here is to talk about a framework. So schedule a reoccurring, non-negotiable money day once a month. Keep it brief. Cap it to like 20 or 30 minutes. Knowing there is an end time prevents the conversation from spiraling into some sort of exhaustive interrogation. Choose a neutral location. Okay, meet at a cafe or go for a walk. Get out of the house. This shifts the psychological dynamic away from sitting at the kitchen table looking at all your bills. Utilize the no blame concept, where you focus entirely on forward-looking logistics, not any historical mistakes. And I find that a highly effective blueprint for modern couples is the mine, yours, ours bucket strategy to define who pays for what, who identifies with what, and get to the stage where you can identify that guilt-free spending and a savings system. So avoiding these money conversations as a couple is one of the most common friction points in relationships. In behavioral finance, this is known as financial avoidance, and it rarely stems from a lack of mass. Instead, it's driven by fear of being judged, fear of conflict, or differing from your childhood money scripts. This is how your parents handle money, and it transforms into your adult viewpoint. Okay, next is not saving. Not saving is not an option. It's easy to get caught up in the tasks and responsibility of daily life, with savings often falling by the wayside. Once you've used your pay to cover your bills, you feel inclined to reward yourself with a treat or two. However, skipping that saving can leave you vulnerable in an emergency. We've already talked about the emergency fund, or unprepared to plan for the future, your retirement. Prioritizing saving with recurring deposits makes it easy to ensure that you're saving a consistent amount on a regular basis. And if you automate it, you don't even have to remember it. Saving 10% of your gross pay is a great way to save for your future. 20% is even better, because without saving, which is a skill in itself, you cannot invest, which in turn means you're not able to provide for your security in the future. So one of the solutions I look to here is the power of automation. Okay, human willpower is a highly unreliable financial strategy. The ultimate solution is to remove that human intervention entirely. And once your banking infrastructure is set up and automatically moves your money from your bank account into where you want to save for your core assets, then you are moving towards your goal passively. And which means, as I said before, you don't have to think about it. Okay, spending more than you earn. Right, it's no secret that the cost of living has surged, with costs for even the most basic items rising. It's hard for some consumers to stick to their budgets no matter how much they earn. So it's important to steer clear of that lifestyle creep, which is where your expenses slowly come up and grow alongside your income, so that your income is actually being spent each pay period. So combined with the lack of structural visibility over where the money is actually leaking, okay, this is formally known as running a cash flow deficit. Okay, spending more than you earn, and it's the ultimate trap. So when this happens, a household is forced to fund that shortfall through either using debt, credit cards, personal loans, payday loans, etc., or by eroding your existing capital. And this is in your savings, your home equity, or your retirement fund. So taking small steps to rein in the spending, even on essentials, can make a difference. Consider shopping at discount grocers like Aldi or exploring your local farmers markets. Do a subscription and debit card suite. Go through the last 90 days of your bank statements, list every recurring automated payment. As we discussed before, cancel any service, streaming app, gym membership that hasn't been used in the last 30 days. And any automated microtransactions, which are the silent killers of a budget as well. Okay, the small amounts because they add up. Audit your fixed commitments. Often, this biggest drain isn't the coffees, it's the structural overheads. Okay, what we mean by this is your utility bills, your internet provider, your insurance company bill. So demand a loyalty discount or compare them on the market. See if you can get a discount to what you're already paying. If you have non-deductible debt, like a mortgage or a car loan, negotiating a lower interest rate or indeed refinancing can instantly free up hundreds of dollars in a monthly cash flow, which you can use for other things. So traditional budgeting, tracking every single receipt fails because it requires constant willpower to keep that up. A far superior alternative is to build a banking architecture that automates your surpluses into those areas where you want to save the moment your income hits your bank account. It automatically pushes it out where you need it to go. With any assistance for your personal finances, feel free to contact me at Wealthcraft at www.wealthcraftfinancialcoaching.com, and I'll be pleased to help you out.